Oh, good.
Shall we begin?
Holy Toledo!
Thank you, Minneapolis.
Let's go. Let's go, everybody. Let's go. Good morning.
Hashtag Faith Radio.
Play around with a bad football team, bad things happen.
The season can't end like that!
Hold on to your butts.
Hey, have a seat for a second.
What are you trying to insinuate?
I mean, pick your poison with that defense. The poison I pick is the offensive-minded 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN, and I'm Paul Allen. Good morning. Our Minnesota Timberwolves beat the Sixers in a game that went from goofy to glorious.
48-45, Butler tried to go too quick, and Jaden picks his pocket, diving in the floor. He saves it off to Julius Randle. Bounce pass Nas to the rim, two-handed stuff. And the Wolves lead by 5 with 2:30 to play.
Slam dunk by Nas Reed with 2:20 to go in the first half. These quarters go too fast.
Well, this one is. That first quarter took forever.
No, this stinks, man, because football games are like too long, and this is too short. Hey, that's me. With Alan Horton, who joins 9 to noon at about 11 o'clock today. Your Timberwolves, as we howl in unison. Big favorites at Charlotte this evening, trying to win back-to-back and win a third consecutive game. Let's go on with that howl. More on that later with the Vikes at 11 o'clock. How about the Minnesota Wild? Had to eke one out last night at Seattle on KFAN.
Rink wide now, right circle, Zuccarello, back to Johansson. Once more, Zuccarello scores! Oh my, what a passing play! You'll see that on a highlight reel for years. And Zuccarello's got his second of this period. It's 4-1 Wild.
That's Johansson, Zuki, Johansson, Zuki, Johansson. It was a masterpiece. And discussing that and the 4-3 victory last evening, and maybe a little on the trade deadline coming up Friday, Minnesota Wild head coach John Hines joins 9 to noon. It's Hinesy at 11:40 from the Couve. The Wild got out of Seattle alive last night, already in Vancouver, from what I understand, and they'll play the Couve on Friday about 7 hours after the trade deadline. And Hinesy is with 9 to noon at 11:40 today. Good morning. The NFL tag time has come and gone, and here we go with the football always wins portion of the equation.
Hardcore football.
First, an oddity. With the franchise tags coming to fruition yesterday, it being franchise tag deadline day at about 3 o'clock, only 2 players received franchise tags.
Oh my gosh, can you above average at that?
Cincinnati's wide receiver T. Higgins and Kansas City's right guard Trey Smith. According to Adam Schefter, beloved Shefty, that's the fewest number of franchise tags utilized since Eric Green and Henry Thomas in 1994.
Wow.
Last year there were 8. There had been at least 6 back to 2019. What's up with all that, or is there nothing into which we can read? T. Higgins is negative because he wanted a fat long-term deal. I think he's been tagged 2 consecutive years. Nordo produces, and good morning.
Yeah, good morning. How annoyed are you if you're T. Higgins and you're getting tagged for a second straight year? And there was drama around the idea that the lack of a long-term contract for him a year ago in Cincinnati. And what did he do? He goes out 2024, continues to be that unbelievably good second option beyond Jamar Chase. And he's just trying to get paid, PA. He's going to make getting tagged a second time. We remember when Kirk went through this and we were marveling with how much cash he made getting tagged 2 years in a row by the Redskins
right
prior to leaving the franchise in the end anyway. He's going to make $47 by the time this year's done. $47 million over the last 2 years. So
That's
you look at that.
before taxes.
That's before taxes. So we do need to take that into account. So he's going to get $47 million guaranteed, 26 this year alone. But if you look at the list, and I think part of the tag situation might play into when you're looking at some of the names, and we'll get into some of these guys that might be available in free agency, and some of them, the Milton Williams types and beyond, really good players and a chance to make a difference. But in some spots, the wide receiver one is quite glaring. You look at T. Higgins, by far, by 10 miles, the top wide receiver option if he was to enter free agency. And then you're looking at a ton of guns for hire. I mean, you can get excited about some of these quarterback names or cornerback names, Carlton Davis. We've talked about, Darius Slay. Some of these types are out on the market. But then it is the Stephon Gilmore type. So I wonder how much that plays into it just based on how these contracts hit in this specific year as to why so few people are tagged. But yeah, if I'm T. Higgins, I'm ticked off because I could have made a bunch of cash in free agency and I'm not getting it.
Fairly stated, because T. Higgins and those who aspire to execute their toil at this level, the highest level, well, they, given the average length of a National Football League career, somewhere around 3.9 years, maybe 3.7 years. So you got to get the getting when the getting is good. You have to strike the metaphorical iron while the fire still is hot. And this is your cliche leader, the fan, and KFAN.com.
I always love that one.
But still, it's tough for me to embrace somebody giving me $40-some-odd million over 2 years, granted before taxes, and I get 20-some-odd million of it. But T. Higgins wanted a long-term deal, and he didn't get one. So he's frustrated. But he still has plenty of cash on which to rest his head into the 2025 season. Now, you want a receiver? The Jets cut wide receiver Davante Adams. Allen Lazard could be next. I got some tweets or like some texts or something yesterday wondering if the Minnesota Vikings would want either here, Davante Adams or Allen Lazard, to which my answers were no and maybe. No on Davante, maybe on Lazard if he gets cut. Davante seems to have found all-out diva mode. Lazard may not be as scrappy as he used to be, but Allen Lazard is widely known as one of the scrappiest and better run-blocking receivers in the National Football League. So I guess if the Minnesota Vikings in some roundabout way are bored with Jalen Naylor, Lazard could help in certain scenarios, assuming he becomes available in the relative near future. Now, it's rather humorous to me. And if this happens, then I'll backtrack on it and say I was wrong. But Davante Adams is released by the New York Jets. So now people are like looking at where's he going to go, the who, what, where, when, and why. And the majority of the reports indicate that Davante Adams could be a member of the Green Bay Packers. Yep, the Green Bay Packers, who brought him into the league from Fresno State. Yeah, the Green Bay Packers, the same team he begged away from because he wanted to go to Las Vegas. Why? Because his family lives in Southern California, and he wanted to be closer to Southern California. Now, he got traded to the Jets, so that's taking a family-related L, undoubtedly, for part of a season. But if Davante Adams can hand-pick a team, and he's going to wait around for super special Aaron Rodgers to land wherever he lands, which could be Pittsburgh, if Davante ends up in Green Bay, God bless the Green Bay Packers and Davante Adams, because that would mean he has flipped on what he said when he begged out of Green Bay and went to Las Vegas so he could be closer to his family. So Davante Adams, as we go here, that would be a no. But Allen Lazard is moderately intriguing to me. Not surprisingly, Minnesota did not tag Sam Darnold. What's next for Byron Murphy Jr.? We may hit that later. And a couple of free agency markets the Vikes might need players from might be more smashable in 5 days than yours truly thought, even as of yesterday. So I'm starting to think out free agency a little bit, and I forgot to write this out, but if I get to it, we'll get to it a little later. With the bevy, well, I mean, the steam seems really good on rookie defensive tackles and rookie running backs. Now, the Minnesota Vikings aren't exactly super desperate running back needy. I think they can re-sign Aaron Jones. But I'm a believer where if a class is chock full of talent, it doesn't matter where you get one, just get one, even with a super special 4 picks for now. Likewise for defensive tackles. So think about this. If the running back and defensive tackle draft classes are truly as rich and compelling and stimulating as all the right people say they are, I think running backs and defensive tackles in free agency might be taking L's. I mean, it's like if you thought you were going to get $1, it might be 75 cents. So I ain't saying that's going to play into Milton Williams. I ain't saying that that's going to play into Najee Harris or free agent running back du jour. But you feel me on that? I'm sensing teams not utilizing these tags and kind of saving their metaphorical chips for free agency, are looking at running backs and or defensive tackles, recognizing you either give us the deal we want or we're just going to draft one, man. So that's something that I think bears following in very controversial fashion up to Monday. And good morning.
Good morning. Maybe next segment we get into a massive deal that a running back just got from his team after hoisting a trophy.
Saquon, though.
But on the other end of that spectrum, it is going to be some guys, and Aaron Jones is part of this conversation, by the way.
Sir.
And he's 30 years old. He made all the games. He got a ton of touches. Did he fade a bit down the stretch of that season? And that's a conversation that the Vikings will be having. But whether it's Najee Harris, I mean, there's these guys entering free agency have a problem with production and notoriety. Combine that with the depth of the draft. You mentioned Najee Harris, mostly stable. Is he explosive? How effective or versatile can he be in certain offenses? J.K. Dobbins spends his entire career in Baltimore effectively injured, then's having a great season with the other Harbaugh's Chargers, actually hurts himself against the Ravens in primetime, and then Rico Dowdle and Kenneth Gainwell, part of the committee in Philadelphia, Ty Johnson and Nick Chubb trying to pick himself off the map. So the idea of the depth of the running back class, I think that forces those names, not only the lack of notoriety, but you're not going to give those guys a ton of term. It is going to be probably a lot of similar deals to what Aaron Jones got with the Vikings, right? 1 year, $4 million, 1 year, 5, 6, or maybe even 7 at the high end. But you're not investing long term in these guys because of your ability to jump into the draft and grab a kid.
Right. If there are going to be, like, say, around 50 defensive tackles and or running backs drafted in significant spots and teams believing they can help immediately, then that means the getting may be good in the old free agent running back and defensive tackle market. And if indeed it is, let's take advantage of it, boys. What's Ben Johnson up to? Coach of the Chicago Bears. He's making plays. Making a lot of plays.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson, coach of the Bears. He traded a 6 to the Los Angeles Rams for swing offensive lineman Jonah Jackson. Ben had him in Detroit. Now, only a year with the Rams for Double J. He played 4 games. They were memorable, right? He was hurt most of the time, and at one point was benched. But Ben says, "Nah, man, that's cool. You know what? The Bears have agreed to pick up all of his $17.5 million that he's owed." Jackson was benched for second-year left guard Steven Avila, who they happen to like more. And then, just when you think beloved Ben is all done, he continues to fortify the Chicago Bears offensive line. And just this morning, or maybe late last night, they trade with Kansas City for a 4-time Super Bowl champion named Joe Thuney.
Oh my gosh, can you above average at that?
We got some Thuney tunes up in here with Joe Thuney. He was the fill-in left tackle in the Super Bowl, and he was awful, but he's not a tackle by trade. So it seems beloved Ben, by the way, Thuney's going to get like $20 million. I mean, so they're already down like half their free agency money just by moving on these 2 offensive linemen, but they got veterans. Ben wants veterans. Ben wants to run offense for Caleb, and Ben recognizes the improvement of Caleb Williams is directly associated to 2 things: the mind of Ben Johnson and the protection second-year Caleb they believe will get. So Jonah Jackson can play left guard, right guard, and center. Thuney's a guard by trade, and both of them, Thuney's right at the end, man. That's a lot of money for Tooney and Jackson, but
Yeah, it is.
But beloved Ben, I mean, he has to know what he's doing, doesn't he?
Well, you're going to assume so, and you're going to give him that runway and the benefit of the doubt. That offensive line was as hideous as advertised, though. I mean, remember that thing throughout the season, PA? They start the season, I think it was Nate Davis, who got the run at right guard right away, but he was so bad they went to another cat, Matt Pryor, who apparently was no better. They've been trying to figure out since they drafted him what to do with Tevin Jenkins. And then who's going to be a free agent, by the way. And then I think is Coleman Shelton, I believe, is their center.
Yep, former Ram.
And he wasn't bad, but he's going to be a free agent too.
Ooh.
So after what we saw, take one of Caleb Williams, they have to do something about that offensive line. Now, this goes back to a talker that I presented to you during Vikes Bites or something last week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that, you might go out and get a guy. So you get a Joe Tooney. But are you against looking at the Tyler Bookers or the Gray Zables if you're the Bears still on Thursday night?
Right.
Or would you go out and, hey, let's check in on this gun for hire Calais Campbell, who's apparently ageless, but we're still going to go Thursday or Friday in the draft, and we're still going to pick another potentially future fat guy in the middle on the D-line.
Or they have Tooney and Jonah Jackson as two members to block for, I don't know, the likes of Ashton Genty.
Oh my gosh, can you work?
Ashton Genty, Chicago Bears.
Wow.
But from a center standpoint, beloved Ben, is I still believe that my man is so competitively arrogant, and that's a compliment, and can be so ruthless that he's going to find his man in the middle by looking northeast to Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
And Josh Myers for his center of attention. Alas, there's more. You're listening to 9 to Noon, your football leader. Sean McVay's playing very, very fast. We'll get into that eventually. The Con mentioned Saquon Barkley and the big old fat deal that he got. And tag day is in the rearview mirror. Free agency begins unofficially Monday, officially a week from today. And all that's courtesy of TimberTech and TimberTech.com. What's on deck 9 to Noon includes Vikes Bites, Vikes Bites, green light, red light, that's around the corner, followed by Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. We have a yearly guest that joins us. He's our friend Tony Scott with Youth Hockey Hub. At Youth Hockey Hub is the Twitter feed. And he's going to help us navigate the state high school hockey tournament. So many Minnesota hockey luminaries have kids playing in the tournament. It's crazy. Stillwater with Thomas Vanek as a coach. His son Blake plays for the Ponies. You got the Panzers, Jeff and Jace. Adam Hauser's son, Matty Hauser. Leo with his son at Andover. This is crazy. Tony Scott at about 10 o'clock. More free agency after that. The Wolves Vox about 11 o'clock. And Heinze, coach of the Minnesota Wild, 2.5 hours from now. Norder produces, and I'm Paul Allen. Good morning. You have found 9 to Noon at KFAN. Wolves.
Vikes Bites.
Good morning. Vikes Bites 9 to Noon is brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef.
Good
and
morning.
You can shop online and a box of meat will show up at your doorstep. Regenerative agriculture. You have nutrient-dense product. You can learn about them. They're a Clearwater, Minnesota company, but you can buy their stuff at local co-ops, local Coburns, local Kowalskis as well, and they're proud sponsors of Gophers Athletics. So we love you, Thousand Hills, Matt and everybody with the bit. Now, before we get specifically to the Vikings, there are a couple of things that I did want to hit on with you here. Actually, maybe this has a Vikings bent to it. Do you remember Jamal Williams when he was with the Detroit Lions, PA?
Yeah, all he did was score touchdowns.
1,000-yard rusher, 17 rush TDs. Well, he's combined for 470 yards and 2 touchdowns his last 2 years in New Orleans. Any interest as he has been released? He was just used incorrectly, PA. Come here, maybe it doesn't work out with Aaron Jones. Keep our ear to the ground for another option in a weird running back market with a super deep draft. Jamal Williams, among those that are now entering free agency. a week from today.
Some would prefer the skeletal remains of Ricky Williams.
We're coming. We're coming.
I may not be one of them, or I may be one. Doesn't seem like Jamal Williams is a fit with the Minnesota Vikings. I want Aaron Jones to return to the team, and I'm not moving off that bitch.
No, I'm with you there. I want Aaron Jones back. I do want to get a taste of that running back mix in the draft, though.
Big time.
And then how that mixes into 2025. I saw the name this morning, PA, and some of that stuff, you've been talking about Brandon Sheriff. Now, Brandon Sheriff's a little bit different because I think he can still play. But you hear those names pop up 4 or 5 years after the Vikings at one point when we had no nickels and no dimes in the couch cushions at the facility, as we would say. And we couldn't afford him. He goes elsewhere, and now he's available again, and it's like, oh, yeah, we'd love to have him on the team, maybe just 5 years too late. But Jamal popped in my head. What a year he had a couple of seasons ago. But that thing has taken a steep dive off of a nasty cliff.
Yeah, I'm on board with that steamer I heard about at the Combine. And I didn't necessarily hear him completely tied to the Minnesota Vikings. But I ain't going to, this is not the we lie covenant. I heard good things about a North Carolina running back from somebody in the NFC North. So I'm not an elite running back mind. If they draft one, I assume that guy's a first-round pick. First name begins with an O. I like him. Now, from a running back standpoint, I should know this, but is Alvin Kamara a free agent?
Alvin Kamara, I do not believe is a free agent. No.
But the Kamara covenant is dicey. All right, this is a holdover from the Combine that I wrote down and we didn't get to, and then we had diverticulitis negativity Monday, and we're at the facility chatting with the calf roper and replaying Finchy, and here we are on a Wednesday.
It's been a week.
The Saints, I mean, they have about the worst salary cap dead money situation I think I've ever seen.
They're 50 under at the moment.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, I think they're going to cut Alvin Kamara and kind of do a rebuild thing with the new coach they have down there. Is it Kellen Moore?
It is Kellen Moore.
Yeah, Kellen kind of fell into that job after winning the Super Bowl. It didn't seem to be a head coaching spot to which many wanted to venture.
Which inspires less confidence? The Friday night news dump Brian Schottenheimer situation in Dallas, or multiple coordinators and assistants effectively playing hot potato or musical chairs, just trying to avoid having to end up with the Saints.
So I think they're going to cut Alvin Kamara. And the steam that I got from Indianapolis is Alvin Kamara quite possibly could be reunited in Denver with the anti-Vike.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Above average.
It's important to us to say this. Breaking, remember you heard it here first. Kamara to the Broncos if he gets cut. And this
9 to noon
is 9 to noon, your breaking news leader.
It's tough to compliment the guy. What he did with Bo Nix was pretty impressive. He would be the absolute, and they had success, obviously, in New Orleans. How perfect would that be? Second year of Bo.
And they got Lil John Humphrey or whatever his name is.
Lil John. And then
something Pumphrey.
Javonte Williams just hasn't gotten it done for them. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. If he goes to the Broncos.
Devontae Adams is an absolute fraud. He's either a fraud or he hated being in Green Bay so much that he lied his way out. Because now I'm starting to think, when we're talking about who, where, when, and why of people going places.
Right.
I mean, Pittsburgh may be interested in the skeletal remains of Aaron Rodgers. Well, Aaron and Devontae want to play that game again. Let's hook up and go JoJo to Zuki and Zuki to JoJo and JoJo to Zuki, and they score. I mean, you can't be farther from Southern California than Pittsburgh.
No, you cannot be.
So he hated Green Bay. He was bored of Kroll's West. And he just wanted to get out of town when he went to Vegas, man. He's become a little bit of a diva.
Well, I thought the connection to Vegas, too, not just being from that area, Fresno State, but Derek Carr was there at the time as well. Then they unload Derek Carr, and he's languishing there.
Yeah.
Is there any element to this maybe where, not just thinking it was going to be bluer skies or greener grass in Vegas, but now, where old quarterback, how much does he influence young quarterback? How much does one's personality or aura affect for the good or infect of the bad people around him. There's a little bit of hitch and wagon to this.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking Devontae, who's probably still has several years of good productivity left in the league. Are you really potentially going to chase Aaron Rodgers around at this stage of his career as the lights are going out quite quickly on that? It's such a weird decision for him to make.
Yes. There are coaches, but there is a specific coach who ain't trying to play with the Rodgers-Devontae drama. And that's Mike Tomlin. No, I ain't kidding you.
It's a good point.
He'd laugh at it.
Yeah.
Seriously, he would just laugh at it. So, anyway, back to the lesson at hand.
Yeah, and by the way, I've received several texts, including one recently here.
But we got a covenant Klizzle?
No. Can we talk about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers coming to the purple?
Yeah.
I would politely say no to that. Where are you at on that?
Well, I mean, he played at Cal, so he no longer has eligibility to play for St. Thomas.
I always love that one.
Speaking of Vikings quarterbacks, PA, no tag on Sam Darnold. You mentioned that in the open. It was expected. There was news about that leading up to the tag deadline that took place 3 o'clock yesterday.
Yeah.
I've been kind of intrigued by the additional insiding and reports that have kind of sidecarred that conversation, where the Vikings are still potentially efforting some sort of deal to get Sam Darnold to return to the Vikings. Adam Schefter, I'd read something via his podcast, kind of, there's not a huge market. So in some ways, the way that we talked about it here, I lean on those final 2 games more than you do, but we both know that those impact the status as he enters free agency.
You must have missed my interview with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, but anyway.
Well, I didn't miss it, but we've kind of gone back and forth. I think those final 2 mean more than the previous 16. That's where I've kind of sat on that with Sam. But it sounds like the way that Schefter was kind of weeding through things, a lot of the people in the league feel that way as well. So the idea maybe there's a Giants hook. The Raiders are very quarterback needy. So the team names aren't necessarily surprising. What's been surprising to me is that it isn't just Schefter. We've heard it from others as well.
It's the locals.
That there's genuine effort to actually still bring him back. And we're even talking about numbers as high as 30, 35 million. That's kind of surprising to me.
It, when I read between the lines of the tweets and some of the locals, the ones that I follow most closely, would be Ben Gasling and Alec Lewis. They'll write something about Darnold and then they'll indicate that it's not over between the Vikings and Sam Darnold and that they potentially could do something moving forward. But I trumped that by head coach Kevin O'Connell multiple times saying Sam has earned the right to test free agency.
Yes.
His past performances on that are 1 of 1 with one thing in that spot. Kirk Cousins has earned the right to test free agency. We know we're not going to get him back. He's going to leave.
Right.
We're going to need to draft one and find some in free agency, and that's what they did. Now, this time last year, I firmly believe that they absolutely had their sights set on Sam Darnold. So they kind of knew, a 1 in 10 for Sam, and maybe we got some sneaky intel that Sam wants him.
Yep.
If that was the case, they were right. This year, and I don't think 9 to Noon could talk it out anymore, the new Sam Darnold is Daniel Jones. And there's going to be a loyalty side to it here where it's my belief Daniel Jones opted to come to the Minnesota Vikings for one reason and one reason only, and that's Kevin O'Connell. So if I believe that was the case at nearing the end of the 2024, well, I mean, I ain't going to bash on Jones if he goes somewhere else with an opportunity to start and gets more than they're willing to pay here. But I am, I've said this multiple times. With Daniel Jones, for me, it's not, well, maybe Daniel Jones will work. No. If Daniel Jones starts for the Minnesota Vikings, the expectation is for him to be a high-end quarterback.
Yep.
Because he's been a high-end quarterback. Sam Darnold never had been a high-end quarterback. Jones has done markedly more in his starting opportunities than Sam. So I just, I'm not taking any of the locals deep or any of the nationals deep here. I'm just on the other side of it. Quite honestly, I'd be flabbergasted if there was an offer made to Sam Darnold that's near those dollar figures that you were talking about.
Well, and I would be too. And so reading into what the coach says, if you listen to Kevin O'Connell long enough, he'll eventually kind of tell you exactly what you want to know. So that's part one. And you nailed it with him having a right to enter free agency. I actually go back a year and I remember the conversations we were having about Kirk Cousins, where there's still interest to bring Kirk Cousins back to the Vikings. They're working on it. First day of legal tampering, you see $150 million. Like, were we really working on it?
Right.
And so I kind of look back to a year ago, and it feels so similar in
Good
terms
point.
of how it's framed up.
Great point. I want to amplify it. You just hit me with something. Because O'Connell had a moment, can't remember if it was here or he said, you could tell he was pissed off that he felt the whole Cousins thing came to fruition at St. Elmo's. It's like, well, he just...
he even mentioned it during the Combine coverage. He was with Eisen on TV and effectively said...
Oh, the Saturday, that's right.
Yeah, would have liked to have, something about
That's
collusion.
right.
Very overt, really, in fact.
Right. In other words, he had been at the Combine all week. He was bored with it. He caught steam that Arthur Blank and Home Depot are shipping all in on Kirko chains, and he knew there was nothing he could do about it. Ooh, I'm glad you brought that up, because maybe the Darnold situation, well, a fairness in Darnold Act is, I'll say for a fifth time, when somebody does what Sam Darnold did last year, they're supposed to be better the next year, in that they know where all the checks are.
Sure.
And, I got JJ over here, and now I've seen it 800 times, and I got Naylor out of the slot, and we're going to fake the jet. We're going to sweep it over here with the new running back. So the expectation is Darnold should be better if he were here year two. But at what cost? Excellent work with Vikes Bites. Let's mix some in a little later.
Yeah.
Specifically that 10-20 and this draft, and potentially killing free agent running backs and defensive tackles. I went common on it and forgot to prepare it. And around the corner, we are going to chat with Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. It's PFT. Yeah, we at FM 100.3 KFAN. PFT, yeah, we. It's ProFootballTalk.com. It's the identity of National Football League reporting and speculation on the interweb. And the proprietor and creator is Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com. Also author of several books, and you can learn more at ProFootballTalk.com. And here he is. The ProFootballTalk.com, I might say this to you yearly, but it's on fire right now, man. It's like you got to hit F3 just to update Jonah Jackson into Joe Tooney. There are just new stories all the time, and up to Monday, it's kind of juicy right now, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. We're in the period where there are going to be veterans who are released in advance of the start of the new league year. A week from today, there are going to be trades that happen in advance of the new league year. None of those trades are official until the new league year begins, and any of them could, in theory, fall apart. There's going to be free agency news and rumors, and then the draft stuff is all happening. So this is one of the busiest months of the year, and it's funny because I'll run into people now that the season's over, and they say, hey, football season's over. What do you do? What do you do until football? Yeah. Those are the ones who tell on themselves as having no idea what ProFootballTalk.com does, right. And that the off season, in many respects, when there aren't games to be played, people become more interested in following the sport, and they go get whatever they can. And if there's no games, they follow the news regarding the eventual games to come, and if all else fails, there may be some news of a couple of insiders getting into a shouting match at a Starbucks.
Yeah, they're like, hey, Florio, how about your Queens? Boy, they sure finished nicely. What are you doing these days? There's no football. Are you writing Cousin of Mine?
I always love that one.
It's a year-round adventure for PFT. I haven't texted with you or talked to you since you went down that road with the Fox guy and Rappaport. What'd you think of that whole thing?
What do you mean? I sat down with you in Indianapolis. What are you talking about?
But it happened. It was reported that day after I left and flew back, and you went to eat.
Oh, I got my days screwed up. So you were there Tuesday, Wednesday.
Correct. Yeah,
it's all a blur for me. We
correct.
did 59 interviews last week. Super Bowl week, we did 47, and I said on PFT Live last Monday before we went to Indy, I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing. There's no way in hell we're doing 47 interviews. I know one thing this week. And I was right. It was 59.
You think?
So I can't remember anything from last week. It really is one elongated blur. But I do remember being at dinner Wednesday night, and just as we were leaving, getting the text with the tweet from my internet son, PFT commenter, that there had been some sort of an altercation between unnamed newsbreakers at the Starbucks at the JW Marriott in Indianapolis. And that's when, of all the things for me to do actual reporting on, that's when I got to the bottom of it, posted the story. And it was one of our, and I've got all the real-time numbers here, it was one of our biggest stories for the entire month of February. It was number 3 on the list with 263,000 page views, and that was just the first story. There were like 3 or 4 others that popped as well as we continued to track the developments from the league, acknowledging that NFL security was looking into it, to Rappaport going on Pat McAfee's show and saying that PFT's got the whole story and it's basically everything that happened and other things. It ended up being the gift that kept on giving. My wife asked me when it all happened, why do you care and why does anyone else care? And it's like, you just have to understand, when something weird and bizarre and different happens, people are interested in it.
Well, it's, right. And I think I read it 16 times at ProFootballTalk.com. Do you think Rappaport, when Fox guy rolled up to him, do you think there's a chance that he started it by saying, excuse me, and you are?
I always love that one.
Like disrespected him that way?
That Rappaport said that to Jordan Schultz from Fox?
Well, I'm just wondering what, because Ian, everybody knows who Ian is. Few know who the other guy is.
Wait. Ian gets called Adam Schefter a lot.
He does?
And he does not like it. So when he walked by our set last week and he wasn't really looking my way, I said, Adam!
Come on, man.
Adam!
Really?
And he was pissed.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I thought there was a chance, Fox guy and Ian is the main event and maybe you and Adam is the undercard.
I always love that one.
Adam and I are all good right now.
Oh,
now,
sweet.
I wanted to try to get together with him at the Combine, but I was just too busy.
Yeah.
But, life's too short to have these dumb little fights.
Wow.
And there are so many other things going on right now that fall into the chaos and turmoil category. I'm kind of looking for ways to reduce chaos and turmoil in my life through the things I can control, if that makes any sense.
Michael, so who ended up being right in this equation? What's the guy's name? Jordan Schultz?
Yeah, the son of former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, which made the location of their encounter even juicier.
I always love that.
I called it, and it took it, I knew from the moment it happened, there has to be a good name for this. There has to be something, and I wasn't going to force it. It has to be right. And one thing I've learned about writing, it reveals itself to you when it's ready.
Yeah.
You don't go find it. The harder you try to find it, the harder it is to get it. And it hit me the next day, the Thrilla in Vanilla Latte.
I always love that one.
The Thrilla in Vanilla happened at a Starbucks. Howard Schultz was the former CEO.
Yeah.
Jordan Schultz is his son. And it was a pissing match over reporting regarding Matthew Stafford going to Montana to meet with Tom Brady.
But who ended up being right?
That's how it all started.
Who ended up being right?
Well, I don't know. But the root of it was that there had been some specific allegations that Schultz was making toward Rappaport regarding things Schultz believed Rappaport was saying about Schultz to other people. And when PFT Commenter talked about it on the Pardon My Take podcast, he said that Schultz accused Rappaport of telling people that Schultz offers Uber stock to agents for information.
This is the best.
Which is a weirdly specific and very bizarre thing to land on. Like, that's a pretty big bingo card to have that pop up. So I personally believe that there's a deeper story here that someone needs to look into regarding things that one of those two guys might be telling other people that the other guy is doing, and then the question of whether or not those things are lies, which would be defamatory, or whether or not they're true.
Ever offer an agent a signed copy of Father of Mine for intel?
I always love that one.
No, that's usually the thing that gets them to never answer my calls.
Right, until you go gangster on them like Wheeling, West Virginia. All right.
I never thought of that. You send out the book as a warning.
Right. Oh, right.
It's the equivalent of waking up in your bed with the head of Karzoum waiting for you. His great horse, Waltz's horse. You don't need to get your hands dirty. And they actually went, if you read the book, Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli, they actually found a way to get a real horse head. Jeez. They didn't like how the fake one looked, so they got a real horse head and put it in the bed for that scene.
Why? This is at ProFootballTalk.com right now, and just a bountiful amount of a free agency and rookie-related stuff. Mr. Mike Florio, why do you think Monday we may learn more free agency deals than in previous years?
Well, I've been talking to some people about this who are in the process and in the usual habit of negotiating these contracts. First of all, there aren't a lot of great free agents this year because teams have learned through trial and error, and more error than trial, that you don't let your great players sniff free agency, that if you truly value the guy, you get it done long before he's anywhere close to the launching pad. But there always are names, and there are going to be guys signed. And the NFL started with this negotiating window more than 10 years ago because tampering was rampant. So let's create a 52-hour window where you can negotiate deals. And the deals get done then. Free agency starts at noon Eastern, 11 cornfields on Monday. Yes, the new league year starts at 4 o'clock/3 o'clock on Wednesday. We'll know most of the deals by then. The money flows by then. But what happens, or what has happened, is when everyone goes to Indy, that's when teams make it known to agents that they're generally interested in their impending free agent. That in and of itself is tampering, but they don't negotiate until, boom, clock strikes 12 or 11. Yeah. What I've heard is this year there's a belief that the negotiations are going to start Saturday and Sunday, even though it's impermissible. Right. There's no way to prove it. The NFL doesn't have the stomach to tell the world that it's got corrupt organizations that are breaking the rules on a regular basis, so they'll look the other way. But expect, as of now, deals to be done. And last year it was like DeAndre Swift to the Bears 15 minutes after 12. Oh, impressive. You negotiated from cradle to grave a multi-million-dollar contract in 15 minutes. That's some fast talking. Right. No, that was done before. There should be more of those deals this year that hit right at 12, not long after 12 o'clock, unless people are going to cover their tracks and hold them for a few hours for appearance's sake.
He's Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. He's also an author of several books, and you can learn more about that at ProFootballTalk.com.
99 cents, ebooks, 99 cents. 99 cents.
I hope I have this right. When I crafted it yesterday, just thinking, it's a two-plus decade radio relationship, PFT and me.
God, has it been that long?
Just 2 franchise tags this year, which you must love because you're negative on the tag, right?
I hate the tag.
Yeah,
but right. If there were more great players heading toward free agency, there would be more tags. Last year there were 8. In 2012 there were 18. It's not a reflection of teams saying, this franchise tag is really unfair to the players. We're just not going to use it. No. There aren't enough great players this year on whom to use the tag.
Right. Yeah, it's very fairly stated, and clearly one of those was identified as Sam Darnold. Not that 1 in 41-ish made sense here, but what do you think is next for old Sam, the man on the fan?
Well, I've been spending a lot of time on this, and I've been trying to figure it out. And look, there are different ways it can go. Now that he hasn't been tagged, that's off the table. I thought maybe they would tag and trade him, tag him and keep him for a year. They might still keep him. A lot of it depends on, and this has parallels to Kirk Cousins last year. Mm-hmm. What else is out there for Sam Darnold? And is he willing to take that in lieu of whatever the Vikings' best offer is? Assuming they're going to put an offer on the table. I have no reason to think they won't put an offer on the table that is good for them. But what is the magic number that would be good for the Vikings to bring Sam Darnold back? And what would the structure look like? Would it be a 1-year deal or would it be 2 years or longer? And 2 years becomes the magic number, magic in a bad way, from J.J. McCarthy's perspective. Because if they make a 2-year commitment to Sam Darnold, I predict J.J. McCarthy's going to ask to be traded.
Holy cow.
And maybe that's what the Vikings would want to do. Before the wheels came off in Week 18 for Darnold, before the chariot went back into a pumpkin, the thinking was, hey, wait a minute. We kind of stumbled into plutonium by accident with Sam Darnold, so J.J. McCarthy's better than any of the quarterbacks in this year's class. You get a top 5 pick for him. You go get some stud player at some other position of need. Win-win. Sorry, JJ.
Right.
Stuff happens, and you're getting a fresh start somewhere else. If they try to do an Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love sit 3 years handoff to McCarthy's not going to be on board with it, I believe. That's going to be a problem. And through it all, and I wrote this yesterday, and I got to be real with everybody. I got to be honest with the audience. I'm not thrilled about it, but there is a sense from people who are dealing with the Vikings that they don't know who's in charge. They don't know who's calling the shot. Now, maybe that's deliberate. Maybe that's part of the strategy. Maybe it's part of the negotiation. One step short of putting a horse head in someone's bed. I don't know. But there's a real sense of confusion as to who's got the final say on this, who wants Darnold, who wants McCarthy, who's making these decisions. And it's created this sense, and you've seen reports that it's very fluid. One of the reasons it's fluid is no one's got a clear picture of who at the end of the day is calling the ball between Darnold and McCarthy.
Okay.
Florio.
Well, whomever made the decisions last year to draft J.J. McCarthy, which I think is cool, and to sign all those free agents, let's have them make the decisions again this year.
Florio.
And secondly, perhaps Dan.
Do you know who it was? Do you know who's calling the shots? I mean, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is the GM.
It's collaborative.
Kevin O'Connell's the head coach, as we all know.
Right.
O'Connell's gotten his extension. Adolfo-Mensah hasn't.
Right.
And the owners don't live in Minnesota. That's always a potential ingredient for a vat of dysfunction stew. The Vikings have done a good job in 20 years with the Wilfs not living in Minnesota of not being dysfunctional. But they might be compensating, through having a great head coach, having a great defensive coordinator to keep things on even keel. But for something like this, critical decision, who the quarterback is going to be, if there's no sense from those dealing with the Vikings as to who's calling the shots, I don't know that's a good thing.
Perhaps
Florio.
instead of Darnold for 2 or 3 and whatever, perhaps Daniel Jones is the new Darnold and he gets like 2 and 22. What do you think of that?
I think that's the best outcome. Look, if the goal is to compete for a championship, and it's been 48 years since they've been to a Super Bowl, as we all know.
Ugh.
Sam Darnold has shown that he can keep you relevant.
Right.
We don't know what J.J. McCarthy can do. Sam Darnold's floor is higher than what we know J.J. McCarthy's is. McCarthy might have the much higher ceiling. He might be the guy. He might be the next Fran Tarkenton. I would say let's not lose sight of the evaluation that resulted in McCarthy being the guy at number 10 last year, traded up a spot because they were concerned about getting jumped by the Broncos because nobody knew who the Broncos really wanted, moved up to 10, had the conviction, necessarily believed he's better than Bo Nix, and Bo Nix took the Broncos to the playoffs last year thanks to Sean Payton. But having Kevin O'Connell there makes a difference too. So let's not get caught up in what Darnold did, because what Darnold did is a product of O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson.
Right.
Trust that McCarthy, who looked really good in the preseason in that one game against the Raiders, trust that he is going to have a floor at least equal to Darnold's and maybe a higher ceiling, and keep Daniel Jones. Hey, I don't know if we've talked about this, but the fact that Jones gave up a 2-month head start on free agency
Right.
to accept a roster spot for the playoff game. I had heard, and I know, Vikings fans don't want to hear this. They didn't want to hear it at the time, but I had heard that there was a chance, and I know this is a narrow needle to thread, but if Darnold had had a not great game against the Rams and the Vikings had somehow won, which good luck pulling off a victory in the postseason if your quarterback's not on point. But if that had happened, it could have been Jones in the divisional round. So they like Jones. So I like your plan. McCarthy starts, Jones is there. If McCarthy gets injured or if for whatever reason it's not working, put in Daniel Jones.
I don't think Jones accepts the Vikings practice squad role last year if Kevin O'Connell's not the head coach. So we'll just see where this goes from here. But
Jones could be this year's Darnold, and next year Jones could be a guy who's getting ready to go to free agency and make good money and be someone else's starting quarterback.
Could be. Lastly, beloved Ben, as in Ben Johnson. So he trades with McVay, gets Jonah Jackson, played a super special 4 games last year and was benched for Steven Avila. And he also moves on Joe Tooney, who was a fat L at left tackle, but he's not a left tackle in the Super Bowl. And he gives up a 2026 4th-round pick. So like 40% of all their free agency money is gone in these 2 guys, right?
Well, they're doing what they can to improve their offensive line. It just shows you how bad their offensive line was last year, that they're throwing out this money now on guys that their current teams don't want. And this is a twist on what we were saying about free agency. Great players don't get to free agency.
Right.
Their teams keep them. Great players who already signed second contracts don't get traded unless their current team has come to the conclusion that something's wrong with this picture. Now, I wonder whether the return of Travis Kelce and the extra $17 million in cash and cap space that he's going to take up forced them to move on from Tooney. But remember, the last time the Chiefs lost a Super Bowl because their offensive line was overmatched, the reaction was, go get Tooney.
Right.
Now that they've lost another Super Bowl because their offensive line was overmatched, the reaction is, get rid of Tooney.
There's so much right now. I can't wait to chat with you next week. I mean, like Alvin Kamara may be a Bronco. What's up with Devontae Adams? Is he really going to follow Aaron Rodgers? Does anybody care about Aaron Rodgers? And we'll chat next week. You're on fire right now.
You assume I'm going to be available next week. I mean, you don't pay me enough to do this. I got other things to do. I got other people to talk to. I don't know why I do this.
Did I happen to tell the vast and ever expanding KFAN audience about a couple of books, Father and this Son of Mine? One of them.
You're not a very good salesman. I don't see an uptick from the Minnesota geographic region in my daily Amazon sales report. So if you do better with your numbers, then maybe I'll do it next week.
Let's work on that Mancini's book signing again for April or May of this year, and we'll see.
Boy, I really want to come back up to Mancini's. It's been too long.
You're the best. See you later.
See you, bye.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. It's PFT. Yeah, you know we. If the kids are the future, you teach them to play hockey well and watch them lead the way. The state high school hockey tournament is underway today. In fact, about an hour from now, we got some games on KFAN The Plus coming up and KFAN for the title games and more. And Tony Scott is a yearly guest, 9 to noon. He's with Youth Hockey Hub. We're going to break all that down.